Okay everyone, so let's get into the AWS training track 1A. This is going to be a lab session. So this is the lab session for EC2. Let's see what we will be doing in these things. So first of all, the requirements for the lab sessions are going to be an AWS account, PuTTY and PuTTY keygen, and WinSAP. So we need these to do these particular labs. So the AWS account is of utmost importance. So I have shared the details on the previous video and this video as well. I'm going to share the details wherein which you can check and check how you can create a trial account on AWS that you can do with that. And then you can download. I would probably be providing the links for the PuTTY and PuTTYgen installers, the link that you should follow and download them. So I'm going to share that, and also for WinSAP I'll do the same. So these are the tools that you'll require for accessing the servers and transferring files to the servers. So these would be the requirements of this particular lab. Moving on, there would be things that we're going to be discussing on this practical session. Those are going to be the network interfaces, the different types of network interfaces that are allowed, and the elastic network. We will not be actually doing a practical on that, but we'll be discussing about that, and the elastic fabric adapter. That's also something that we're going to discuss here. Now, the other thing that we'll be discussing is an EBS snapshot. So we will be doing an EBS snapshot here, and we'll see what that is. And then we'll talk about the volume encryptions, how they can be done, what is it, and how it can be done. That we'll be discussing. We'll also be looking at CloudWatch. So it's basically the performance monitoring. So we'll see that. We'll do the default one. We'll not do the detailed one because it's a chargeable thing. Not going to do that. Then we'll be using Userdata we'll be creating an EC2 instance which will have a bootstrap within it. While it boots up, it'll have a bootstrap script running. And this is what we're going to do with that. So we are going to install basically a web page. We're gonna basically install HTTPD. We're not going to install a web page. We are going to use this particular user data so that when you have the server up, it will have a particular web page hosted on it. So it would be a web server. We're going to create a web server using the user data. So that's what we're going to do, and we will also see how metadata works for us. So let's go ahead into the practical session. Okay, so right now I have clicked on the AWS console and I'm going to sign into my account. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the root user email address. That's my address here, so I'm going to type my address. So I've typed in my address. I'm going to click enter. Yeah, so I've entered my address wrong, so I'm going to type it again. I'm going to click enter. I'm going to type in my password. So yeah, my machine has it. Basically my browser actually remembers my password, so it keeps on asking me for that. So anyway, so you have to remember your password and username to actually access it. All right, so we are in the console now. So now let's go ahead and see and get familiarized with the console before we go ahead and create the EC2 instances. So let's go ahead and check this out. So once you are into the actual console, you'll see that it will look something like this, because if you have not built anything or this is your first time that you're logging in, you will see something like this. So you don't see any services that you have used yet. You do not see any history as such, so you don't see anything here. And basically you can go ahead and launch a virtual machine. All these things, there are solutions that are given here, and you'll see the timings below that. So it's pretty straightforward, and it takes not more than like 5 to 6 minutes to do these things. So we will see that later on. And now let's go ahead and check on the services that we have. So if you click here on services, you will see that all the services that AWS provides, is right under the right under this, so you can go ahead and check it. So they have divided it according to the use that you have. So you have compute services. So under compute services, you will see EC2, Lightsail, Lambda, Batch, Elastic Beanstalk, so on and so forth. So these are the compute resources that you have. You have manage and governance, and under which you have AWS organizations. Again, something that we will be discussing later on. You have CloudWatch, which we will be looking at as well. So these are the management stuff. You have storage stuff like S3, EFS. You have database that we'll be discussing again, which has RDS, DynamoDB solutions under it. You will go for a much more lower. Then you will find things like networking and content delivery, again VPC, CloudFront, Route 53. I mean, basically we are going to definitely look at VPC, which is a very important service. We will be looking at CloudFront. We will be looking at a little bit of Route 53. Then we're going to discuss about direct connect. So we're going to look at all these services. So this is how you can have that. Now, now on your console, one of the things that you can do is you can actually customize your console by pinning a few of the services that you're gonna use regularly. So let's go ahead and do that. So right now, the services that we are going to use on a regular basis. So let's go ahead and pin that in. So I'm going to be using EC2 Instance. So I'm going to pin EC2. I'm going to pull that. I'm going to place it here. I'm going to place the EC2 instance there. I'm also going to use VPC. So let me check where VPC is. Let's see this. Okay, for some reason I'm unable to find VPC. There it is. So there is VPC. I'm going to drag it there. The other thing that I'm going to use is probably an RDS. So so it should be somewhere. Okay, for some reason I'm not able to find these things. Okay, I found it. I'm going to drag it up as well. So these are the three services that I'm going to use regularly. So I have put it there. I'm going to close this so that I'm going to use it from here. So I can click it from here. I can go to or else I can go to services. I can type in the service name. Like for example, I can type in EC2 and click here. I can do that, or simply I can go and search here. Basically go through the entire list and select the service. Here I'm going to select the service EC2 here. So this will take you to the EC2 console now. So this is the EC2 dashboard. This is a new view that basically it has introduced, AWS introduced. So you will see that we are redesigning the console and blah, blah, blah. So you have the new EC2 experience here. You can go back to the older one, but I'm okay with this. So I'm going to use this. So I'm going to use this to actually create an instance. So first I'll be clicking on running instances here. So if you have any running instances here, you will find it right here. And see, if you see all these things, you have dedicated hosts, you have volumes, key pairs, elastic IPs, snapshots, load balancers, security groups. All of these things are given here. Now, for some reason, I have an elastic IP which is here, and it's not getting used. So before going ahead, I'm going to just go ahead and delete it because this is a chargeable thing. We'll discuss why it is chargeable. So because this is not associated with it, I am going to release this IP. So I'm going to release this elastic IP before going ahead and doing anything. I've released it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go to the EC2 dashboard again. I'm going to click on running instances. Now once this loads up, you'll see that there are no EC2 instances that I have ever created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply click on launch instance. So now this is what we discussed under the AMI. So AMI is basically Amazon Machine Image. So now if you see that there are a lot of images that are given to you, so you can either use in all of these images that are directly provided by AWS. So you have these things as free tier. So if you see a tag which says free tier, this is basically coming under your free tier account eligibility. So you can use these images for your free tier eligible EC2 creation. So that you can select. Now if you create your own AMI, you'll find it under my AMI. So see, if you see that I already have a AMI for basically WP website that I created. Basically it's a WordPress site that I had created. So I have created a AMI for that. You can use AWS Marketplace AMIs also. So these are certain AMIs which are provided by companies or basically companies or people basically as a solution for different things. So like Juniper, Barracuda, F5, all of them are providing. These are AMIs for specific purposes. Like for Barracuda and Juniper, it could be networking solutions that they are providing, like firewall services they are providing. If you go for something like NAS, it's a NAS solution that Soft NAS is providing. So Trend Micro is for basically for security, F5 is for virtual connectivity. So these are different solutions that you can find here, and this is directly from the marketplace. Now you have these different categories under which you can find different images for that as well. But this is very possible that these are going to be charged, and you will see those charges below this. So it's 4599 rupees per year, $4.99 per year for this Barracuda solution. And if you go for a Juniper solution, it's like 0.55 per hour for using this, or 2280 per year dollars per year if you're going to use the Juniper solution. So these are going to be charged solutions under the marketplace. And there are some community AMIs. Now these are generally free of cost, but these are free of cost in the sense that you can use the AMIs free of cost. They are just shared by the community. So the community, that is basically the AWS community, wherein which they create different images and they can be shared with each other. So these would be images that are shared with each other, and you can also use these. So now what we are going to do is we are going to use the quick start one. I'm going to use the ones which are the base models that AWS provides you. And just to be sure, I'm just going to click the free tier only. So if you click the free tier only, you will find all the AMIs that are provided under the free tier eligible criteria. So here I'm going to just select the Amazon Linux 2 AMI, which is the base. It's Amazon made Linux image. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to select that. Now before going forward, why I'm selecting the Amazon Linux images, basically it has all the Amazon tools, basically the connectivity tools that you can use to use different services, AWS services later on. So this is something which we'll be using. We can use different scenarios. Obviously you can use the Windows image or the basically CentOS image or RHEL image. So you can go ahead and do that. I am right now just selecting that. Now I'm going to select an instance type here. Again, now if you see, this is the instance type we checked out. So there are various versions of it. So you have a T2 micro, which is under the purview free tier. And if you go down, you will have T2X large. You have a lot of things like in the T range. You have the M class of instance type. And then you can go down, you'll find A, C. So there are there is an array of different types of instances that you can choose from. I'm going to keep it under the free tier eligible, and I'm going to click on next to configure the instance details. So I've clicked on that. Now it will ask you, now here is where you actually select what all you require for your particular instance. So I'm going to select I can select the same configuration for multiple EC2 instances to launch. I am just going to keep it at 1 now. So the purchase option, now this is what we had discussed. So what type of instance that you require, I can actually go ahead and request a spot instance so that I can reduce the cost if I am going for a high performance thing that I'm looking at. But I am not looking for something high performance, so I'm not going to tick on the spot instance. Now the network part is where if I have like different networks set up, so like different, when I say different networks, it means I'm going to set up more than one VPC. Right now I do not have multiple VPCs within my account, so I just have this one single account. So if you click there, you will only have one option of one VPC. That is the default VPC. So now under the default VPC, there are, like I said, so if you see here, this is my region on the right hand corner. If you check, you will see that there is a region that you can select. So you see that I've selected Asia Pacific Mumbai as the region. Now Asia Pacific Mumbai is the region, and the region name that they have provided is AP-South 1. Now if you go ahead and select this, you will see that under that region you have three different availability zones. One is AP South 1A, where the other one is AP South 1B, and the third one is AP South 1C. So these are the three availability zones, which are, so these are basically I mean the data centers which are physically apart by like 20 kilometers plus within the Mumbai region, and obviously they have the redundancy of their networks, their power supplies. All of these are like separately kept, so they are discrete, and they have different so they are redundant. So even if one availability is down, you will still have the access to the other availability zone. So that is what we are looking at here. So I'm going to keep, there is no preference, it can select. So what I'm telling it to do is basically you can go ahead and put this in any of the availability zones. So we will discuss why we require the subnet, and basically what is going to be what we are going to do within that. So again, now after setting that out, so subnet is where we can actually set up the range of IPs also. So that is what we can select here. We'll see that much more in the VPC section of it. So after we do the VPC theory, we will be going into the VPC practicals as well, where we'll see how we can do that. So there we are going to create a different VPC altogether, and then we will be seeing how that is different from the default VPC. So we will be doing that. Now auto assign IPs, again one more setting here that I'm going to leave it as default, but we will see what difference it will create when we are going to do this within a VPC that we create now. So now this is a default VPC, what you get when you're creating an account. So when you're creating an account, you will have basically VPCs or in a VPC per region. So you will have VPCs all over. For every region you will have a different VPC. So okay, so I'll get into that after this. I'm just going to show this. I'm going to create an EC2 instance, then we'll go to that. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it as default. We'll talk about placement groups. I'm not going to tick that right now. Capacity reservation, I'm not going to select that. It's going to be this thing, open. I am not, there is nothing else, so I'm going to leave it as open. There is no IAM role that I'm going to relate to it. I have created a IAM role earlier, otherwise you will see nothing over here. So there are no IAM roles presently that I'm going to assign to it. I'm going to leave it as none. The shutdown behavior is stop or basically terminate. You can choose between the two. I'm going to keep it as stop because I don't want to terminate my server. So what this behavior means is basically when you tell the machine to actually do a shutdown, when you do a shutdown on the machine. So like I go to, go and tell it to shut it down, it will go ahead and terminate if I select the terminate part. But if I just in this case it will just go for stop. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to do a hibernation part also, and I'm going to leave everything else here. So now this is the tenancy part where you can actually select a dedicated host, or basically a dedicated instance or a dedicated host. I can select any of these options. Again, if I'm going to select that, this would cost me a huge amount, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to I can even go ahead and basically select the speeds of it. So these are burst mode selections which will allow you to have better speed. So if you hover around on these eyes, you will find what they do. So if you hover on this, basically you will see that it will give you some advantages, basically a burst mode for improvement in the CPU familiarization, and so that those things it will be taking care of. So this can be done. I am not going to do any of those things. I'm going to leave it as is. Now if you scroll further down, you'll see metadata, that is metadata that we are going to access. What we saw earlier, that is something that we're going to access using this. So we will be using this to check out what this is set as enabled. If you disable it, you will not be able to check it. So I've kept it enabled. So there are different versions and all. You need not bother about these things. This is not something very important to know, but it is good to know that it is there. So you have those, and then finally the user data. Now I'm going to leave this open. Now we will be creating another server wherein which we will be using the user data. So I'm going to leave it as is now. I'm going to leave it because it's an optional thing. I'm not going to use it right now. I'm going to click on next, add. Now if you see, this is by default it is going to add a 8 GB root volume. So this is the root volume that it is creating. Now what we discussed was basically what is the volume type. So the EBS volumes that we saw that there are three types that are, like I mentioned. So in the root volume, only provisioned IOPS, general purpose SSD, and magnetic. These are the default ones that are given to you. This is only for the root volume. So now if you see the root volume, earlier what we used to have is basically this part, the encryption part was not allowed for the root volume while creation, but now it is allowed. And you can add a new volume here. So if you go for an EBS volume that you're going to add here you will see all the 5 options here that we discussed for the EBS type. Now again, I'm not going to add another EBS volume onto this, but this is just to show you the difference between the EBS volume that I add and the EBS volume which will have the root or the OS installed on it. So the OS allows you to have 3 options, that is general purpose SSD, provisioned IOPS SSD, and magnetic SSD. Sorry, not magnetic SSD, the magnetic volume. So you have these 3 types that you can install OS on. So I'm going to leave it as general purpose SSD because that is allowed under the basically the free tier purview. So I'm going to allow it. I'm going to go and click and next, add tags. I'm going to add a tag. So here I'm going to name this. So I'm going to put a name tag here, and I'm going to name this as okay, so let me name it as, say, first EC2. Because this is the first EC2 that we are creating, I'm going to name it as first EC2. So I have typed in the name. I can add other tags like the ID and stuff, but I'm not going to add. I can add it if I want. Basically, users, I can add it as admin. So this is basically something, it's a key value pair that you add here. It doesn't matter what is the first key, what is the key or the value pair. It doesn't matter, it is random, you can put anything. So that's fine, I'm going to do these, but name is basically taken as the name for the EC2 instance also. So that is something that you can put over here. Now I'm going to click on next, configure security group. Now, security group, like we discussed earlier, this is basically what you're going to use for as a firewall to the EC2 instance. So here I'm going to go ahead and create a new security group. What I'm going to do is basically in this security, so let's create. I might have security groups already here. So I have a web server test here and a DBSG which I have created. This were not default. So what I'm going to do is from a previous demonstration, actually I had left this out, but I'm going to create another for this demo, actually I'm going to go ahead and create another security group, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this as web server SG. So I'm going to name it as WSSG, web server SG, and I'm going to leave this this thing as well, the description as well as WSSG. I've named it. Now if you see, it has a default rule that is there, that is for SSH. I'm going to add 2 more rules for because this is the web server that I'm using. So I'm going to allow HTTPS on this, and I'm going to allow all to come in. and I'm also going to allow HTTP here. So if you see these, what we are going to do is basically the type I can select. There are a lot of services that I can provide access to. Now and if you click on any of these, what it does is basically selects the type that you have selected, the protocol that it is. The port range automatically gets selected. So these two you cannot change because you see that they are grayed out, because you've selected a particular service. If you go and select something like a custom TCP rule, obviously you can go ahead and select this. This is again TCP, because I selected a custom TCP rule, protocol is locked, and you can select the port range. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep this as HTTP right now. So you can go ahead and play around with it when you're using it. So I'm going to leave it as HTTP here, sorry. So I have left it. You can actually give it a description also, and this basically what it means, the source is in 0.0.0.0/0 means for IP version 4 any address which is in the range of 0.0.0. So basically any address can access, that is what it means. And the ::/0, it means any IP version 6 address can also access it. So I have done that. I've given this, I've created this security group, and if you see, this is all that it is there. There is no incoming, outgoing stuff here. So the reason we will discuss, you'll get a better idea when you're looking at the VPC part of it, where we'll be discussing the difference of a security group and an NACL, or basically network ACLs, network access control list. So we'll be going ahead and checking that out in that section. So now let's review and launch. What review and launch does is basically it creates a page in which you can actually go ahead and check all the things that you've selected till now. So you'll see that I'm using this particular AMI. The instance type that I selected is T2 micro. Now the security group is WSSG that I just created. These are the permissions that the WSSG has. You can go ahead and select the instance details here, these and all, everything that you can see here. I have these tags also, storage also what is selected. So if you had an EBS volume that was added, you'll find it here. Now I have two tags. One is the name, which is the first EC2. The second one is users, which is basically admin. So I've done this. So this will be applied on all the instances and volumes. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Now it will here is where it is going to ask you for a key pair. Now I can go ahead and choose an existing key pair, because I've created two key pairs earlier. But for this demo, I'm going to create a new key pair. So I'm going to name this as training key pair, training KP. So I have created this key pair. I'm going to download this. So like I mentioned earlier, this would be the key that you will be using to open the padlock for this particular EC2 instance, or any other EC2 instances that are actually related to this particular key pair. So whenever you create a new EC2 instance, and if you select an existing pair and associate this key pair with that particular EC2 instance as well, then it would be the single key for all your padlocks, basically all your EC2 instances. I'm going to download this key pair. You will see that this will come up here. So I have downloaded this. I'm going to so I've downloaded this. I'm going to launch this instance. So while this EC2 instance is getting launched, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply copy this from my downloads folder. Okay, so I go into my downloads folder. So here is the downloads folder. I'm in my downloads folder. I'm going to copy this to my desktop. That is where I'm going to use this from. So from here, what I need to do is first, while that EC2 instance is spinning up. So if you click here, you'll see that this particular EC2 has now spun up. And basically you'll see the status as running, and the status checks are also up. So I'm going to keep this as is. For using this particular basically for connecting this, you have certain options. If you want to connect to this, you can click here and click on connect. You will see these are the options that you can go ahead and connect to this particular one. you can go for a standalone SSH client, which is what we are going to do using the putty client. There is a sessions manager that you can use. I mean, again, these are again certain other ways of getting connected to that, but we are going to use the one that, I mean, I can directly click here to connect. This would open I mean, basically a web browser, which will be an SSH client to it. So this is one way of doing this. But instead of doing this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use putty so that universally you can use it anywhere. So what we need to do for the putty is basically, first I'm going to use the puttygen. So I'm going to type in puttygen. Now I'm going to load this particular key that I have. So I'm on my desktop. I don't see the file. I have to click on all files. I'm going to click on this. I have done that. So now you'll see that this is the key that it is there. I'm going to save the private key. I'm not going to save it with the passphrase. I'm just going to save this as it. So I'm going to name this as training ppk. So this is the ppk format, is the format for that key. So I'm going to leave that as training key pair ppk. So kppk. I'm just going to leave that name as is. So I'm going to save this, and you will see that it has been saved here. I'm going to close the putty keygen. Now I'm going to use putty to actually access this. How do we do this? So I'm going back to the console. What I'll do is I'll basically grab the IP version 4 public IP from here, and I'm going to use this on my putty dialog box. So I'm going to open my putty. I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to paste it here. Now what you need to do is go on to SSH, scroll down. You'll have an auth part here. I'm going to click on the auth part. I'm going to browse for the keys. I'm going to browse for the key here. So basically this is the older key that I was using. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go to my desktop where I've saved the new key. I'm going to select that. I have selected that particular key. Now all I'm going to do is basically open it. So for you to use this again and again without a lot of hassle, what you can do is now go back to the sessions. Now I'm going to name this as AWS new. So because I already have the name selected as training here, I'm going to name this as AWS new, and I'm going to click on save. So what it does is it basically creates a part where you have this AWS new here. If I load this and enter, we'll see that when we're creating. So if you're creating another EC2 instance, you just have to change the host name basically the IP address, not the host name, basically the IP address here, and then you can use it. You can actually copy the public DNS into the hostname file, hostname part, and you can use that as well. But I'm going to use the IP address here for now. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to open this now. It'll jump for and ask for that particular usage of the key. I'm going to say yes. So now you will see the console has opened up. Now as default, this particular the AMI that we use, the Linux AMI, it has a default root user as EC2 user. So I'm going to type that in, EC2 user. I've typed that in, so you'll see that I am directly logged in now. I can go for the root access to it. So root access is basically sudo su. Now a lot of people, Linux admins would tell me not to do a sudo su, instead use sudo before any command that I'm using, but I prefer for this training purposes, at least I prefer using sudo su. So I'm going to do that. I have done that. I put sudo su. Now I can do a yum update here. So you'll see that because we had provided it access to, this is a default VPC, it has directly access to the internet. So you'll see that you are able to actually go ahead and install anything on this. Now what we will be doing going forward, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the web server on this particular, basically I'm going to create this server or this machine as a web server. How do we do that? I'm going to install a module called the Apache module, which is HTTPD in this case. So I'm going to do a yum install HTTPD here. So once I do that, it will ask you whether you want to go ahead with it. I'm going to say yes. So once this is done, you'll see that the HTTPD module is installed. Now the second thing that you're going to do is basically go to the location in which you have the actual host file. Basically the file that you're going to create the HTML page. We are going to create an HTML page by going to that location. So that, what is that location? That's var www or www, whatever you prefer, HTML. So if you go to this location, you will see that there is nothing at this point of time. I'm going to create a file which is index.html. So I usually use VI as the editor. So there are different editors. VI, you can go ahead and install Nano and use that as well. But I prefer the VI editor, so I'm going to use that. So vi space index.html. So I am going to create an HTML file which is index.html. Now what I'm going to do is simply create a HTML file here. So how do we do that? I'm going to create a HTML. So for that, to click on enter to actually start typing in. I have clicked on enter. So you'll see that there is an insert here right at the bottom. Now I'm going to type in HTML. I've typed in HTML. I'm going to type in a header. So H. Now the header, I'm going to keep that as bold. I'm going to keep it at the center. So I'm going to type in center. Now I'm going to type in this is the website. I'm going to close the center part. So center. Now I'm going to close the bold tag. Now I'm going to close the header. Now I'm going to close the HTML completely. So I've done that. I've created a HTML file. Now what I'm going to do is, I did something. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to save this by putting escape : then typing in WQ. I'm going to save this file. Now if I do a cat index.html, I'll see this is what is the content of that HTML file. So now what I need to do is, now I have to start the Apache. So I can simply type in service HTTPD start. So now you'll see that the HTTPD service has started. Now if you go back to the browser, I can just simply select this IP address and I'm going to paste this here. So you'll see that this is the website. Now this is what we have created, and it's accessible using the IP address anywhere. You can, obviously you won't be able to do this when you're seeing this because I might have already deleted this EC2 instance. But at this point of time, when I've created it, anywhere in the world, if they type in this IP address, they are able to use this because I've given complete access to this. So I have done this. Now let me do one thing. I'm going to create another EC2 instances, another EC2 instance, and what I'm going to do is, instead of going into the EC2 instance, I want the EC2 instance to already have this installation, have this file with this particular content. So how do I go ahead and do that? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do a history here. So this is because I'm just showing you what I want on this particular. So I want to do a yum update. I want to do do all these things. So I'm going to Control C, copy this, not Control C, just do a, this is already selected. I'm going to go to my notepad. So I opened my notepad and I've pasted this here. Right, so I've pasted this here. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to go ahead and use this to actually create my other server. So these are the commands that I need to have. So the y tag is the dash y is basically used for telling it that okay, there is going to be a prompt, go ahead with the yes. Now I have done this also. I don't need a ll here. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to to that location, create the basically instead of the vi, I'm going to just create a file. So I'm going to touch index.html. Now instead of doing a cat, what I'm going to do is instead of this, I'm going to go back here. So here is what the content was. So I'm going to select that again, and I'm going to do a echo, and I'm going to paste what I selected from there. I can go for a single quote. Sorry. So I've done that, and I'm going to put this into this particular file. So I've done that as well. Now that you've done that, I'm going to start the service after that, and I don't need the history part here. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put this under the as a bootstrap script under the user data. So the bootstrap script starts with this notation. So this is the notation it starts with. I'm going to select the entire thing here. So you'll see that first I'm going to do a yum update, then I'm going to install httpd, then I'm going to cd to the basically the location for the HTML file, and then I'm going to create a index.touch. Basically creates an HTML file, basically any file there. So I'm creating an index.html file there, and then what I'm going to do is echo this particular detail into that particular file. So this is how I'm doing it, and then I'm going to start it. So basically I, instead of doing website, I'm going to mention this is created by a bootstrap script, or simply bootstrap. So okay, so this is the website created by a bootstrap. So I've selected that. I'm going to copy this. What I'm going to do now is going back to the console. I'm going to launch another instance here, select the same AMI. I'm going to select the same free tier eligibility. Here I'm going to keep everything default because we didn't change anything in the previous one. I'm going to keep everything here, but under the user data, I'm going to paste this. So if you'll see, I've used the bin bash notation. So this is what we are going to select. Okay, so this is what we are selecting here, and now we're going to select the next add storage. So we're going to leave that as is. Nothing changes there. Now we'll add tags to this. So I'm going to tag it as with the name. That is going to be my first thing. So I'm going to give it a name as second EC2, not Sion. It's second EC2. So I've named this as second EC2. Again, I can give it something like a user tag here. Say sales teams is going to use this. So you can give any tags here, but that's fine. This is just for an identification. I'm going to click on next. Now I'm going to select the same. Now I'm going to click and select the same security group that we created for the last one. So you see that this security group has the basically HTTP and HTTPS as well as SSH access to it. I'm going to review this and launch. So okay, I just click previous. So okay, review and launch. So so this shows you everything that we have done now. I'm going to simply launch it. I'm going to keep the key pair as the training KP. Not that I'm going to access this particular EC2 by going into that EC2, but I'm going to simply show you that this will actually launch a web server now, a simple web server. So let's wait for this to come up. Let's go and click on this. I'll see that this is coming up. So you'll see that the instance state is presently pending. So if you wait for some time, it will come up. So let's refresh from here. You'll see that now it is running. Just waiting for the status checks to be completed. So we'll give it some time for that to come up. So the reason why I'm giving it some time is because these installations sometimes take time, and the bootstrap will it will take some time to come up. So now you can actually go ahead and copy this and try pasting this to check if it is working. It may not work. So yeah, it is already started. So now what I've done is, without going into the particular server or anything, I have created a web server, simple web server, which is using the bootstrap. So you'll see that one server is basically, this is a website. I actually went into this particular server, typed in basically I had typed in everything that I require over there. So I had done basically in yum update, I did HTTPD or Apache install on that. Then I created index.html, and I put the contents on the index.html file. All these things I had to do manually. Whereas with this user data, what I simply did is, when I launched it, it launched with the particular bootstrap that we put under the user data, and that is how we were able to access this. So now let's go ahead and check a few different things on this. So if you will see here, you'll see that this is the instance that you have here. So because I've searched, this is basically on launch, I had selected that. I can close this. You'll see there are two instances. There is the first EC2 instance and the second EC2 instance that is present here. Now, if you scroll down, you will see the network interfaces part. So this is something that we had discussed, that we're gonna check it out. So if you click on network instances here, let me click on network instances. So you'll see that there are two network instances created now. So obviously one is connected to, one each is connected to the network, basically the EC2 instances that we have created. Now what we can do is basically create new network interfaces here. I can go ahead and create a network interface saying that NI1. I can put it into another subnet, and basically I can use this on any of the security groups, so which are in that particular subnet. So I'm going to select, say, WSSG. So I'm going to select that. I can auto assign here. Now there is an option right here. If you see, it is set the elastic fabric adapter. Now what is an elastic fabric adapter is another option that you will get. So using this, what we are able to do is basically create a adapter which is basically used for HPC. Now which is high performance computing. Now what this does is basically it bypasses the OS kernel, and let me put this way. Whenever you usually have a machine working, the access to the internet is provided through the kernel access. So the thing is, there is a limitation to it because it has an OS layer that it has to go through. So the speeds are variable there. Now, if you see in case of Elastic Fabric Adapter, what it does for you is basically it does not have to check the kernel. It can bypass that. So by doing that, what you can do is basically get really high speeds. Now this is used for high performance computing. So in case, like, I mean, you're using things like, say you're accessing some data within to say a stock market, yeah, or a commodities market, or any of those things. So you will use a elastic fabric adapter to actually, where the even the what do you call it, the time latencies matter a lot, because even 1/5 of a second matters to you, then yes, this is the thing that you would be looking at. So basically this is now this cannot be used for Windows at the moment. This is only allowed for OS mods where you have Linux based OS, so you can only use it for that. Now, the other part is basically, instead of if you require something like a high speed, high speed access, you can, you can use multiple network interfaces, but the actual method for having access to speeds of 10 to 100 Mbps, 10 Mbps to 100 Mbps, basically you would be looking for a ENA. So what you do with an ENA, there are two types of ENA. One is ENVF, and basically it's basically called EN. So my bad, it's not ENA. ENA is one part of it. So it suddenly slipped out of my mind. So it's an elastic network. So elastic network has basically ENA. It's an elastic network adapter, which gives you speeds up to 100 Mbps. And then there is the ENVF, which is basically elastic network virtual function, which is Intel 82599, which provides you speeds up to 10 Mbps. So I mean, if you're going to provide if somebody asks you if you need higher throughputs, then obviously the option is to go for ENA, not even ENF. So it would be EN as the solution as a whole, but if you need higher speeds, definitely go for an ENA. Now I am not going to create basically I'm not going to be showing the EN part of it, or the elastic fabric adapter here, because these are charged. So if you obviously you can just go and hover over this I, it will show you that what it is. So the elastic fabric adapter is a network device that you can attach to an instance to reduce latency and increase throughput for distributed high performance computing. So that's exactly what I had mentioned. So you can use this for high performance computing and machine learning applications. So if you create a network interface now here, I am not going to create it, but if you create it here, what you can do is basically go ahead and set sorry, I can go ahead and select this, and I can actually associate IPs to, I can manage the IPs. I can dissociate addresses from it. I can go ahead and also I can actually add this to the EC2 instances as well. So if you want, like certain companies use a different port for administrating that particular machine, and the access elsewhere is on a different adapter, that can be done using this network interface. So that is for the network interface. Now under the elastic block store, you will see the volumes. Now in this case, you will see two volumes here. I've clicked on it, you will see two volumes here. So that is the first EC2, because we tagged it. You will see the naming convention here is as first EC2 and the second EC2. So these are the EC2s that have been created. These are the volumes that have been created for those EC2 instances. And if you see the size, this is 8 GB each. These are the root volumes that we selected for this. This is the free tier versions, and we have used this. Now I have, if you go to snapshots, you'll probably not see any snapshots here. You have snapshots. So these have been completed earlier. Now, if let me see if these are for this particular machine. So volume. Let me go to this check if this is for this particular volume. So no, so this was created some time back, so it is definitely for not these. So there are no snapshots created, but I can actually use these snapshots to actually create a new machine per se. So these are the snapshots that we were talking about. So I had created it when I had created an AMI image earlier. This got created from that. So now you have lifecycle manager. We'll discuss that later. Security groups, elastic IPs, placement groups, all of these we'll be discussing later. Under the key pairs, you'll see that again, this is coming under security. So you see that there are 3 key pairs that I've been using. This is the newest one that we created. This is the one that we are presently using to access the EC2s created. So yeah, I've created that. Now, and we will be going in detail about load balancer, target groups, launch configurations, and auto scaling groups later on. So this is the basic idea of EC2, how we create it. Now let's go back to the console. The EC2 instance. Now we had discussed something about basically we had discussed about how we can use the metadata, or how we'll find out about the metadata. So let me go to that particular this thing. I'm just going to open my this thing, because I to be fair, I'm just going to show you how we can do that. So now if you go here, now I want to check out the metadata, right? So I'm going to go here, I'm going to do a curl. Okay, so for some reason I've gotten disconnected. Let me reconnect to this. So I am in. So I am in again. I've done a sudo. So I can do a curl. Now HTTP. And type in 169.254.169.254. And after this, let me remember this, it is latest or meta dash. Okay, so yep, so I think that is correct. Yeah, so if you put this in, you will find a series of metadatas that can be metadata, basically data about this particular instance to be precise. I'm going to do it as AMI ID. Let's check if that is working. Yes, so this is how you get it. So if you do a curl 169.254 latest metadata and the data that you require. So in this case, I've asked for the AMI ID, which is what it is here. Now I'm going to use the same thing, and I'm going to use this to find out the local IPv4 address. So you'll see that this is the local IPv4 address that I have for this instance. I can go ahead and find the instance ID as well. Instance, right? So you'll see that this is the instance ID. So these are the details I can get from it. I can even check out the MAC address for this. I can simply type in, this is the MAC address basically for the ENI that I've created. So the interface that is attached to it. So we don't have to actually go ahead and create it separately. It gets created when it is when the particular EC2 gets created. So this got created here. So this is what we have here, and there are a lot more metadata that you can retrieve using this. So I'll be providing that separately on the page that on my website in the blog for this particular training session. You will find those details there, so you can go ahead and check that out. So yeah, so this is what it is. So that's about it on the EC2 lab section. We will be going into the S3 part of it now. We will be checking out the S3 service in the next session. So join me in the next session and we will be doing S3 there. Thank you for joining on this lecture. We'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you.